Alright, so I played a game recently called Against the Storm. This is a very solid game in a genre which I do not enjoy whatsoever. Which is why it's so strange that I've played it for hours upon hours before even touching the highest speed setting over difficulty. As in, I was entirely absorbed for a while. I'd recommend it strongly, even to people who, like me, do not enjoy city builders. Although, if you don't like random challenges and being screwed by an unlucky draw either, well, maybe it can still work, but once the difficulty ramps up, sometimes it feels entirely out of players' control. Still, a low difficulty is definitely enjoyable for everybody. What is it about? Honestly, I don't know, or I do, but I truly don't care. The story here is very much secondary. The important bits are the fantasy world, the constant coming of a storm, fleeting existence of anything outside the capital, and of course seals which prolong the inevitable. Given more time to fight against the storm. Yeah, so the game is about to play a viceroy, being tasked with building these small colonies, hopefully having them prosper, getting some resources in return, and making it to the next cycle, which wipes out everything. Each time there are 3 races, random resources, and a whole lot of glades to open up, and hopefully get something useful, and not yet more fertile terrain without any farm blueprints. What did I enjoy? Roguelike, or roguelite, whatever it's called now. Because the original concept of rogue seemingly became forgotten now. Did you people even know that rogue's supposed to mean turn-based game where everything only moves when the player does? That was what rogue actually means. Permadeath is just a sugar on top, or poison, take your pick. Anyway, roguelite kind of concept isn't new. Slave Aspire, Hades, Risk of Rain, and there's definitely an oversaturation of that right now. However, I've never seen it in a city builder before. So imagine this sort of thing in Settlers. Simple and honestly a somewhat unoriginal idea, but it worked so damn well here. It's kinda brilliant how well. Neither of these go well together logically, but they've made something great. Somehow. Often the player can be completely screwed due to picking some kind of wrong production. For example, expecting a large supply of meat in a snowy area because harvesting giant snails gives quite a bit of it, and apparently when starting the map there were supposed to be a bunch of them. Meanwhile my settlement starves as I'm given a ranch and a bunch of farming facilities and zero ability to actually harvest the biggest snail resource nodes. But then it all suddenly turns around when I gain a perk for free grain every minute and a major harvesting camp blueprint from the trader, which fixes every problem. But of course, in this city builder, people dying and hating the player isn't enough. Of course, there is also a time limit, with Quinn's impatience, changing seasons, which might randomly kill off 10 people because you don't complete some weird need. Constantly ramping difficulty, taxes, and of course new glades suddenly exploding because it's impossible to afford fixing the machinery. It's fun, and not at all stressful. But yeah, I'm kidding. It is actually fun to be stressed out sometimes like that. So the main gameplay loop is enjoyable to me because it doesn't boil down to having the most optimized roads or the best kind of production facility placement or something equally unfun. Most of the building can be moved, raised for a full refund or just turned off. I remember back in the day trying to play Caesar and never even figuring out how to put roads down properly without everything getting stuck and messed up. And there are a few others I'd found just as tedious. Against the Storm is very simple in comparison, but still requires a lot of decision making and a whole lot of gambling, which essentially describes 99% of a game to me. I can praise the fact that the graphics are cute, what the creatures are enjoyably clumsy, the chubby little beavers especially. I can praise what the game isn't demanding, what it seemed pretty damn polished even when it was in the beta. And but it still gets updates and changes. One change I can point out is the tea. It used to be a very rare resource because it needed metal bars to craft. Metal bars to craft tea, don't ask how. Now it's a lot more simple with any kind of container, herbs of other kinds, and any kind of water. It's just so much more variety when trying to craft it. And there are plenty of other changes which make the game a lot more smooth and less frustrating. And there are even new biomes, like a stone forest, where you can't even chop down trees, instead drown it in stone. Or the Seal Strider port, which goes out for expeditions. It's really cool, interesting updates. Anyway, it's not all roses though. The idea of roguelite difficulty is something that can feel very unfair, because it's just so random. because it can be fun to fight against the unfair odds. However, in this game, it's a little bit different, because, first of all, the runs themselves are a bit longer. Well, scratch that, a lot longer than some other games. Sometimes they take multiple hours. And also there could be annoying gameplay mechanics, like for example, one of the things what people do on high-level challenge maps is manually controlling the tree chopping. Meaning they chop the trees until there's 1 health left on the tree, and then they ignore it. Imagine doing that for every single tree, constantly pausing and unpausing to get through the run with as little hostility generated as possible. It sounds like one of the least fun things to me. I'd rather defend against a cannon rusher. And the thing is that in a lot of these kinds of games, the player can simply fit square pegs into circle holes just by being so crazy skilled that they break a completely unfair situation. This is not it. There's obviously a skill to the game, but you can't expertly dodge all the attacks. I can recall sometimes getting only a couple of items while already being able to face the final boss in the first Risk of Rain, because all the drops were just so terrible. And I probably failed, but a better player probably could have made it work. This isn't the case in Against the Storm. The Queen's impatience doesn't just decrease because you did a fancy maneuver. Oh, and another point is the typical problem with these kinds of games, your ability to have more than one run at a time. You can't just save, go for another city and come back to the first one. It has to be this one, start to end, or nothing at all. And I found it frustrating when I just want to bounce around a bit. Or maybe even come back to one of my finished cities. I suppose it's not a big deal, but it does hinder my enjoyment a little bit. So what I would say is that the game Against the Storm is great, and I've gotten a lot of hours out of it. But when venturing into high difficulties, be warned. It can just be a frustrating mess. It reminds me of StarCraft 2 co-op, Mutations. When the game just decides to give the player darkness, fatal attraction and polarity. That sounds just like so much fun.